Hi, this is Nathan Anais, Festival Director of Indie Comic Con, a festival celebrating Aussie indie comics. Welcome to Radults.
So, hey Chris, how you going?
Oh, good. How are you?
Yeah, doing alright. I'm going to get straight into it and ask, who are you and what do you do?
I am who you said I was. And
Chris McQuinlan.
And I'm an illustrator from what used to be Frankston, now Cranbourne, so I don't know if that's any better.
Underclass.
Oh, yeah.
Well, kind of. I mean, it's
Hey!
Moving closer to your
I would argue he went down a grade.
Hey, look,
As a Frankstonian.
I went from Noble Park to Berwick. Like, I'm there going,
Yeah.
Dude, you upgraded.
Oh, easily. Fuck Barry.
Cranbourne.
Problem is, like, I went from Cranbourne to Frankston and then had to go back to Cranbourne because Frankston was becoming too expensive. I was like, what the hell?
Words that I never thought I'd hear.
Legit, invest in Frankston. Places on the come up.
100%.
They finally worked out that where they got all their ingredients from was right down the road in the Mornington Peninsula.
Oh, see, there you go.
Awesome. So, you've said that you're an illustrator.
Yes.
But what exactly are you illustrating? What are you currently working on?
Currently, my biggest project is Monkey Jump, which is a standalone, ongoing series comic, which I'm working on with my mate Lee Piper, and that's sort of my biggest project that I'm doing. Next to that, like I just do a ton of client work, so
He needs to do some Space Cops work.
yes.
Just getting end of podcast. Send that there.
No, like I used to be graphic designer full time. Ironically, it just got made redundant. So I'm now back into illustrating just to pay the bills until I can find a new job. But I'm just doing random projects at the moment. I'm working on like a flip book for a company animation and just drawing random shit. I'm doing like logos for breweries and some beer labels and shit like that. So
Where do you get your influences from?
man, it goes way back to like Ninja Turtles old school. That's sort of where it started.
Donatello was the harshest. Won't take anybody's arguments against it.
Harshest?
Yeah,
What
man.
about Leo?
He went out with a fucking stick. That's it.
True.
Donatello.
No blade.
Donatello.
No sharp edges. I'm gonna stab legs. I'm just gonna like whale you with my blunt.
So how do you
stick.
go from the influence of the Ninja Turtles through to influencing your own work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Donatello's
Ninja
from
Turtles?
Frankston.
Ninja Turtles, like, my brother was always drawing it, so I was like, yeah, sick, so I'm gonna draw it. And then like Power Rangers came out, so I started like drawing that. And then Dragon Ball Z was like the catalyst. Like I just could not.
And you can see that in your work. Like I think like nearly everything that you do now has some sort of like take on that. Like you can see
like
very
Akira Toriyama's like constantly had an influence on me over the years, and I always sort of pulled away, like discovered J. Scott Campbell, Jim Lee, Scotty Young. I was always like pulling
Pendleton
ideas.
Ward.
Yes, oh man, Pendleton Ward, fucking like Anthony Holden. Like I could go on, but there was always like this weird thing where I always went back to like Dragon Ball, and like once I got more into like the older Dragon Ball as I got older. Like I really started resonating with more cartoon style, and like I just like okay, I need to be like the whitest Cranbourne version of Akira Toriyama. Like,
Slings dope on the side.
yeah.
But I mean that's
Make a
it.
living, so.
Your art is very much like if I had to like sort of like elevator pitch it, it would be like a mix between like let's say Dragon Ball Z mixed with a bit of regular show, mixed with a little bit of Adventure Time.
Yeah.
But then also with like just a whole different distinct style that's put on it that I guess could also be like akin to almost Pixar style as well. And you've sort of made your own style from taking I guess what you love from other styles into it and then sculpting that.
Yeah, look, and there was actually like sort of a point where I realised that that's what I enjoyed doing. Like when I started doing conventions, like with the Comic Cons and shit like that, I was always trying to be like the next Jim Lee and do like these really sick, realistic Deadpools and X-Men characters and stuff. And that's sort of where I got my start on like the comic scene. And I got really bored of it really quickly. I was just like, this is shit. This is so much hard work. I'm not having fun. I'm literally drawing for everyone else. And then I'd look through all my old sketchbooks and like I'd just see random really cartoony shit and I'm like, that's fun. And I just kept rolling with it. And since then, I've never had a boring moment again, like drawing what I want to draw. And people have resonated with it too. Like they actually enjoy it. They are requesting to see, you know, my style and different characters. And, you know, it's wicked. Like once I had made that realization and I started really focusing on it, others, you know, sort of followed along. And I was actually scared too because like, all that following I built up, I was really worried that people were just going to go, oh, well, you're not doing cool shit anymore, fuck you, dude. That didn't happen. Like, people were just like, there was a lull. I started doing conventions with that new style, like doing, you know, real cartoony prints and stuff like that. And like the sales dropped, but I was like, I don't care, I'm having fun, so whatever. And then it's slowly sort of come back. Now we're doing like Monkey Jump. You know, people sort of realise where I was moving.
But you've got that resurgence as well. Like, for instance, shows like Steven Universe, Adventure Time and stuff has made that style of art popular.
Yeah, that popularity sort of came at a really good time for me. Yeah. And I was able to sort of take on that when I, like I said, doing cons, like fan art of that stuff was sort of part and parcel. It sort of just worked out well. But yeah, I got sick of doing the fan art. I wanted to do my own thing. You know, wanted to have my own Steven Universe or Adventure Time. And,
yeah, and I think knowing you, and I've known you for a few years now,
too
like
long.
I think too long, we're both not wearing pants right now. I think that your art now is more honest. It's more you. I think that if you look at your art, like it suits you. Like your humour comes out in your style of art as well, even if you're not writing it. Just like the way that you like pose a person or like the facial expressions.
And like look, the collaboration I have with my writer, he's really good in sort of understanding who I am, and we work together really closely anyway. So if he's got ideas or he's writing the script, it's always going to come through to me, and I'm going to make changes anyway. But he's pretty on point with it. But yeah, even the character designs, I try and keep it pretty close to my heart. Like these characters I've been working on for like 10 years anyway. So there's like, I was just talking to a friend before about it. They're like, oh, this character really reminds me of you. Like, was it based on you? And I was like, they kind of all are in an aspect. Like,
Crispy Bacon.
Yeah, Crispy Bacon is like, you know, the donut loving side of me. There's Abby, like, she's like the personality I wish I had. Like, she's sort of just a really outgoing, just doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks. And then there's Geordie, who's like the really pacifist, like kind of quiet, which is probably more a better reflection of me in sort of my natural environment. It's very rare that people see me being my general self, which is really not giving a fuck kind of guy, and really crude jokes, and it takes a while for me to get out. But I mean, like now it's quite easy. You know, two guys I've known for a very long time. Like I said, you and Brenton forever, but you know, it's easy.
12 years, maybe.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally, like you see me behind the table, I'm just this quiet, shy little person. The last few years have been like a real learning curve. Like I took a couple of years off conventions and I'm sort of back at it, but I've learned a lot in that time. It was almost like taking a break to sort of realise what I needed to be doing just to be a better creator and actually be a businessman. And that's one thing I think a lot of people forget about doing these conventions or being a comic creator is it's all good and well to create comics, but if you really want to go the extra mile and you actually want to go somewhere with it, you need to be a businessman. You need to be able to sell yourself. You need to be able to talk to anyone who approaches you, and that goes beyond even just the customer. Because if you want to start moving to publishers, you've got to be a sort of comic. You've got to be able to say, "This is what my comic's about. This is how dedicated I am. This is the amount of work I put into it. You know, I love the company. You know, you need me. Like, you don't not want me."
100%. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else? Like, if you
100%.
can't sell yourself, why would anyone else sell you?
Yeah, and like, I suffer from one of the biggest problems a lot of other artists have is actually accepting praise.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
A lot of people are like, "Oh man, you did a really cool job on this comic." And they're like, "Oh, thanks man, thanks." But it's like, I really should be like, "Yeah, cheers man, really glad you appreciate it." Sometimes it's hard to be that all of the time, but you know, you sort of have to learn. And I think that's one of the toughest things is actually realizing you need to learn how to do this, or you need to learn how to. You know, people are like, "Oh, I'm an introvert and I'm just not, you know, able to talk to people." It's like, no man, teach yourself. Go out there and just do it. Do these conventions and stuff. You'll get there. everyone will learn.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, you can also, to an extent, you're allowed to have like a different personality when you're at conventions. You know, you're allowed to make, I guess, like almost like an alter ego. What's your typical work routine look like?
Man, I'm super strict, so I get a few people, and again, this comes down to me not being able to take compliments, but I get a lot of people really sort of praising how hard I work, and I like to make that public because I think if I don't, I think it can be contagious to have a strong work ethic. But for me, I'm up at 4:30 to 5 a.m. every day. When I was working full time, and even now, between that time that I wake up and about 7 o'clock, that's when I work on my comic.
Brilliant.
Because if I don't, there's a good chance I won't work on it that night because like I have a 2-year-old, I've got a wife. Life's generally unpredictable as soon as that kid's awake.
Yeah.
So waking up when the whole house is dead, I can work 100% focused. Anything after that is work time. So I'm off to work, smash it out, or like now I'm working at home freelancing. So I generally write to-do lists. I fucking live and breathe by to-do lists.
Cool.
So if I don't know what I'm going to do next, I can just look at it and go, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to work on that beer label that I'm working on, or I've got to work on, you know, setting some Instagram posts up. I've got notifications on my phone to remind me to post on Instagram so I don't miss a beat to, you know, stay active on social and keep relevant. 4:30 hits, clock off, it's family time, hang out with the kid, do some gardening, which I recently got into, which I never thought I'd fucking enjoy gardening, but man, it's the fucking best thing ever.
He's actually quitting comics
To
just
become
going full-time gardening.
To be a horticulturalist.
No, like my last job was in the horticulture industry, so like it was a bit contagious, just like designing plant labels all day, and I was like, man, plants are cool, like they grow and shit, like.
So,
Growing shit.
it's very organic, the process.
It just shows a lot of your growth. So you went make sure to branch
it's
out.
really interesting that you said that you get up like early to make sure that you work on your comics, because that's exact. Our first guest, Matty Taylor, illustrator, said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right, was that for him, because of the fact that he's got kids, it's about.
I actually learned something from that episode. Like, listen to him. He's like, I get up early because it's me time.
Yeah.
He's not only just doing comics, but he's like, I just want to watch this TV show that I can't watch when anyone else is awake.
Completely.
I didn't even think of that.
Proof that our podcast is educational.
It is educational, see?
Yeah,
Woo! My mum's going to be so
I'm
proud.
doing the thing now.
Because my mum taught us St. Teresa's in Cranny, right? And she's going to be so stoked right now. She's like, he finally grew up to be a teacher. It sounds like you found a really good way to balance something that a lot of people find quite difficult, and that is the construct, like the family construct, like needing to be able to dedicate yourself to that, but then also finding time for you to be you and to continue to be creative. So I think to an extent you probably provided people listening right now with some tips for being a adult, which is actually...
And look, man, like to be honest, I honestly attribute that entire sort of schedule, that habit, is I did the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge at the beginning of the year. Like, just quickly, like I suffered mad depression last year, went to really dark places, wanted to work on Monkey Junk, knew that drawing would pull me out of it. Did the 100-day challenge.
Released that big book as well that came out. From
the Life in Space anthology. But by doing that, it was a catalyst of creating the habit. But because I knew that I had to work on the comic, I already knew that my schedule was pretty fucked anyway, because life was just insane, having a kid and all. I was like, well, what are my choices? And that's how I created, like, get up early, do the thing, blah, blah, blah. And then it was, now it is a habit. It's, getting up early. Look, like, some people can't do it, I get it. Like, some people need, like, 1 million hours of sleep a day just to function.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky that I can survive on, like, 5 hours.
5 hour sleeper? Yeah.
But, like...
It's because you both grew up in, like, Franks and a Cranny, so you're actually, without knowing, you've been, like, ingesting speed since you were a kid.
Yeah, man. The quarry just outside of the house is just pure milk soaking into the air.
Mum, why are these rocks blue? Plug what you're working on at the moment, and also your socials, where people can find your work.
Man, check out Monkey Junk. You can check it out at monkeyjunkcomic.com or Monkey Junk Comic on pretty much any social. You can read the comic there. You can actually read it for free on Webtoons. The link is on the website.
But you should buy it because it's kick-ass.
Support the things you love. Support the things you love.
Like, if you buy it through the website, you get a shit ton of freebies anyway, so it's way more worth it. And there's a ton of free content on there anyway. There's like free avatars and free desktop backgrounds and phone backgrounds, and there's a free sketchbook in there. Like, there's a shit ton of free stuff, so go there. Otherwise, you can check me out at Chris McQuinlan Art on pretty much everything.
And you have a Monkey Junk account too, don't you?
Yes, yeah, so at Monkey Junk Comic. So
everyone check that out, give it a follow as well.
And if you want to just learn some art shit too, you can hit me up on YouTube at Chris McQuinlan Art. I do like a ton of tutorials and shit on there too. So
He said toot.
He did say toot. Anyway, before we let you go, we do have to do one of our signature rad breaks with you. Today we're going to be playing Radults or Badult.
Oh shit.
And this one is fairly simple for you, I think. So
but maybe not, if you know his background.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I was dreading this part too.
Okay, so is Frank Miller a Radult or a Badult?
Yeah, so he knows the background. As soon as he was like,
I saw that last fucking Dark Knight cover. I'm going to say he's a bad
You heard it here, folks.
You gotta know when to quit, man. You gotta know when to quit. The paycheck doesn't always dictate.
I think that's the tip for being a
That's
Radult.
the tip for being a Radult. You gotta know when to quit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
awesome.
Guys. This is good.
Thanks for joining us. That was awesome. I'm just going to start it off nice and easy. Just, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Angie Spice. That's a good start. I'm a self-published writer and illustrator. I've been doing it for 2 years. I've got 5 issues out of my comic book series Courier, The Adventures of Geraldine Barker, and that's set in Tasmania during the 1940s. That's probably what I've been doing most of my career so far, of 2 years.
That's, you think about it, for indie creators that are self-publishing, 5 issues, and they're not short issues either. Like, that's quite prolific.
It is, because I'm from a manga-inspired background, so I'm used to reading a lot of material, and that's kind of what I, want to also create. To me it is important that there's a lot of story to, indulge in. I think that's the main thing. I probably could, create more polished illustrations, but then I wouldn't be doing anything. I wouldn't be creating, economically.
I think that's a really common factor that I've talked to with other creators as well, is it's like, where does it get to a point where you need to put the pencil down and go, okay, this page is complete, as opposed to releasing it as to doing the actual artwork. You could burn yourself out doing a 4-page story.
Well, that's the problem of most people have, is that they never finish anything. It's I think it's Jake Parker, finished not perfect. That's it, that's how I go by as well. Like, sometimes I'm like, it could have been better, but I'm like, I wouldn't have done it otherwise. You either do it or you don't. There's no try. Now I'm getting all philosophical.
Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly...
There's no try, and it's so true. Just listen to those sayings, listen to Yoda.
Listen to Yoda. That's a tip for being a Radult.
Listen to Yoda is definitely
it's that simple. It's like, all of a sudden you find, why is life so complicated? It's because we make it complicated, and I'm guilty of that. I overthink things, and I'm like, go back to basics. Just enjoy your art, enjoy what you do, love it, and don't worry about the result. It'll come to you. Just be one with the force. And
One.
So we take you into Star Wars, but apart from that, I'm
not really a fan anymore.
I'm gonna edit that out.
Me neither.
I used to be a fan, but then when Disney bought the rights to it, everyone else was a fan, and I'm like, I'm not so special anymore.
Yeah.
No, I still love it.
Just the original trilogy I'd be happy with. Just give me that. I'll just live off that.
Just live off that forever?
Yeah.
But Yeah.
No, they've done great things with it, and I quite enjoy the new films. Like
They're good.
I
they're
love
Disney.
Rogue.
They're very Disney, I think. Oh, Rogue
No,
One.
they've stayed really true. Rogue One reminded me of watching an old trilogy.
That one was probably
great.
my favourite. I think The Last Jedi I thought was very Disney family orientated. Like they had a lot of like aspects that you could find in other Disney films. Force Awakens was very J.J. Abrams and stuff like that. And then I think Disney was like, we need to sort of like bring this in.
Oh, we're getting away from that exceptionally talented and famous guy. Let's, and a long way from a galaxy far, far away is 1940s Tasmania. I'm really curious what your influences are that led you to situate your creations in this universe.
Tasmania, I went on a holiday there. I'm actually from King Island, which is, part of the Tasmanian state, but
That's
it's not part of
fascinating.
the Tasmanian island. So I wouldn't actually go to the mainland of Tasmania that often.
No, it's a completely self-sufficient community, right?
What do you mean?
In that, you live there for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
And, there's farmers and agriculture is one of the industries.
No,
and
fast. Yeah, people live real, we're not living off the land or anything.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There's no McDonald's and no traffic lights and.
What's the population?
It's like 1,500, but it fluctuates a lot.
My high school had more people.
Me too.
Yeah, Melbourne's a big city compared to King Island. But yeah, Tasmania, I really connected with the environment and the presence I felt there. Have you been there?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I just feel empowered and I can't explain it. And I thought, there's so many comic books about, science fiction and about zombies.
I've actually covered both in my
I'm so
time.
sorry. I didn't mean to say I didn't mean that.
Shots
I
fired.
just thought, okay, I want to release my first comic. I want to do something. I want to create the story that I wanted to read when I was growing up.
Awesome.
And why not Tassie? I feel so inspired and it's so beautiful and it'll be great having that and having this really drop-dead gorgeous sort of what did I base off again? Or no, not Audrey Hepburn, Catherine Hepburn, movie star in Tasmania. I just thought that would work really nice as a contrast there.
You've just spoken about your influences, sort of where you draw from. I guess a good question to go and lead on from is, what does your work aim to say? What would your statement be?
I think my statement is that Tasmania has a lot of history, and particularly the women, played a big part in the war as well. During World War II, the time it was set, a lot of women suddenly got a lot of freedom in jobs that they could never have done before, and that was very liberating for women at the time. So I kind of wanted to show that side of the story. World War II was also, any war, World War was exciting for some people.
The theatre of it and
you're on an adventure, and that was,
that's how they marketed it, to recruit people.
Yeah, totally. But obviously it was pretty grim for them.
Yes. It's a grim holiday.
Yeah.
Not quite the European cruise I want to go on.
During some of my research, particularly for this issue, I was looking at the nurses group. There was photos of these nurses going off, to do their bit, and they're just so excited, the excitement on their face, they're just on a boat,
You've launched a book today, correct?
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's different from my because I've got the main trilogy, which is the Medina arc, which is 3 books. You sort of need to read one after the other. The 4th book is set after those 3 happen, but it's kind of I've done it in kind of like a Quentin Tarantino style, where it's in non-chronological order. So I'm gonna I'm seeing how people receive it. But I'm really proud of this work. It explores it's got more context. There's yeah, like I said, there's Japanese soldiers in it, and they, I've done a bit of typing, hiragana and katakana, just because I can. And I've got a tribute to the first Tasmanians, the Palawa people, particularly what happened in history at Cape Grim. There was a Cape Grim massacre, and like a whole group of people were just killed and thrown off a cliff. So that's part of it as well. And I've kind of like featured that in the comic in a dream sequence. So the main character Geraldine is dreaming about what happened, and then in this book she actually ends up going to this same place because she's sent to deliver a package there because her boss is furious at her for being late. Because in the last trilogy she was missing for 2 days because she got stranded in Medina Town, and all this stuff happened like it does in a comic, and she couldn't get back in time. So he's like, "Oh, I'm going to get rid of you and send you to Cape Grim." So because Cape Grim has a reputation of people not coming back. So
I mean,
anyway.
so we normally are a positivity podcast. We talk about like positive mental attitude as well as having like the creativity side of things and how you manage to do that. What sort of discipline do you find that you've got to put into your comics to, I guess, be able to live your everyday life and still create art?
I was talking to someone else about this. Like the first career I did, I gave myself a month to do it, and I met the deadline, but I lost a lot of sleep. So during the second issue, I was really depressed and I was really sick. So I sort of realised you can't just cram it all. Like, getting something done in a month, you get it done, but it's not, what's the word? Oh my god. The word. You can't do it all the time. You're not gonna last that way.
Finally, someone else sung on our podcast.
We need to get a duet.
Sometimes my vocabulary just goes, and it's been a long day.
It happens to all of us, don't worry.
Yeah.
It's not. When something is
consistent.
Yes, that's the word.
There we have the word of
Thank
today
you.
is consistent.
It's not gonna work. So I sort of, I've kind of learned to be consistent, but not. You can't pull all-nighters anymore because your mental health is going to go down. So I've kind of learned to pace myself, but sometimes it's hard even when I'm meeting a deadline now. I stay up as long as I can. I don't stay up till I used to stay up all day and then not go to sleep. So I'd stay up 24 hours and I got really sick from that. Now I can't really stay up later than 12 o'clock. But when I'm reaching a deadline, I might stay up till like 3 a.m. That is not drawing. That is just editing the book, like reading over and over, proofreading over and over, sending it to someone else to proofread over and over. Then checking the crop lines over and over. Like one big issue I had this time with my comic, which isn't really an issue at all, is that I was working on manga paper, which has a slightly different dimension to comic book format. And because I've been reading a lot of manga recently, it was just in my brain that what I was creating was manga, but it was a comic book format. So my images were actually not skinny enough, and I left like plenty of room for it to be cropped at the bottom, but it ended up being way too much space. Usually, I'm pretty good. Like I always rule out my dimensions, but this time I was feeling overconfident. But it really hasn't made too much of a difference, to be honest.
Where would people find you on social media? Where can they find your artwork?
Okay, just type in angiespice.com. That's ANGIESPICE.com, and everything is on there. You can find me. Or you can type in Korea, The Adventures of Geraldine Barker. I sell everything online, and I also sell them in all the best retailers.
All the best retailers.
All the best.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So we're going to just finish up with, what would your number one tip for being a radult be? What, in your eyes, what makes a rad adult?
Just following your instinct. I find too many people don't, and they end up in a situation they hate and they can't get out of. And it gets harder when you're older to I found to correct that and follow your heart and try just do what you love. Do what you love as much as possible.
I like it. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. Everyone check out Angie Spice. Obviously, you've heard all the links and we'll chuck them in the bio as well. And pick up Angie's stuff so that she can keep making it.
Cristian Roux, welcome to Radults. Now, who are you and what do you do?
Geez, how do I answer that question? I've been making comics for a few years now. I think if I do the maths, it turns out to be more years than I actually think it should be. It somehow got away from me. I started making comics as a way to just keep creative juices flowing as a sideline to my other artistic practice, and it very quickly snowballed and just took over everything because comics take no prisoners and don't allow anything else really. It's just all consuming, but also that's part of the appeal of them.
Says the person that has multiple projects. It's not like he's just working on one thing.
I just found that working on one project was just because it was just a bit of a lonely thing, because I was writing and drawing it, and I wanted to reach out and just work with other people and see how that would push me, and also just make a connection with people, and so I just started to open myself up to the possibility, and some things came up, and I found that kind of worked kind of nicely, and it was good to sort of get those ties and connections, and it's been a lot of fun. There's sort of pros and cons to both ways, I would guess.
I think that Cristian is one of the unique creators, at least in Australia. The fact that your work bears resemblance to a lot of realism. Your work is very defined and very detailed, which isn't as prominent in comics as it used to be. I think that it was, you go back to old stuff that Alan Moore was doing and stuff like that, where not that Alan Moore was illustrating it, but the stuff that he was releasing was heavily detailed and shaded, and so I think that you've got a distinct style, at least within Australia. I think that your work's set apart from others. And do you feel that you've sort of found a place doing that style of art?
I still feel like I'm finding my style. I think I keep just through that sort of natural kind of artistic critique and growth and challenging myself and trying to. I almost feel like I've been trying to pare it down and simplify it and make it clearer and just because I think that's sort of what when I look at work that I respond to, that's sort of what it is. It's there's something. So trying to pursue that sort of simpler line and that clearer picture, I think it's just there's something about that simplicity. Whether or not I'm actually achieving that. It sounds like maybe I haven't got there yet from what you're saying, but I guess it's a bit of a juggle because you kind of I like that the realism, or when you as opposed to being sort of purely cartoony, but even sort of more cartoony stuff like that, I guess there's an element of reality to it. Yeah.
Who would you say your influences were when you were first starting, and who they are now?
It's interesting because I think the first sort of influences, it's much about sort of discovery and exposure, and so earlier influences would definitely have been Mignola, artists similar to that. I love the kind of a lot more American artists, and then gradually as I've sort of discovered more of them, it's sort of more European or non-American artists. And like Nicolas de Crécy is a French artist who's done some stuff and has very little work actually published in English, but he has this incredible, just very different. It's very different to American comics. It's loose. It's watercolors. It's just there's a lot more about art in it, and I guess that's sort of what's attracted me. Sort of what I've sort of become more and more interested in is that less of the American comic book style, the black and white artwork, and more of the kind of the looser sort of, I guess, European. Where you're playing with different mediums, and it's just got a different look and feel and love of that material. So that's sort of something that's intrigued me more and more.
I think that's something that, I probably should have said earlier is, you've got like a very like European comic feel with your work, and they look at, for those that don't know, the Europeans seem to look highly on comics. The ones that they do, like the high quality sort of stuff, they like to release not so much trade paperbacks, they do like the hardcover, almost coffee table type books, and the people that they have, like Mobius and stuff, and even how they treat Australia's own Colin Wilson when it comes to the work that he has done. It's almost like they've taken this art form that as Americanized, people sometimes look down upon, and then they've made it into like an art form that they regard highly. Maybe not so much Europe wide or anything like that, but in that scene, like they've made something that would be a magazine into like a tome of a book.
Well, I think I think you're right. And it's that. As much that different attitude that because it's not just hardcover, it's a larger format, and it's a kind of, it's almost like it's paying, it's honouring the artwork more, and I do feel like the comic art is art, and so when you've got a kind of medium that respects it, it's a lot easier to sort of actually, I think it just works better all around. And I think America's coming around to it, and I think I sort of look at the sort of, there's a lot of talk about how people think that the American publishing industry is all falling to pieces, and you hear that a lot and all that, and I think it's just changing. I think they're finally sort of catching up to the fact that, it's not as disposable as they once thought it was.
It's quite a big idea you're touching on there. The idea that perhaps the art form has more worth, I suppose, than people might have previously attributed to it.
Yeah.
Which makes me curious as to what the most important big idea you've been exposed to in your life is, and how you applied it to being the Radult that you are.
So general life experience in making comics. Look, I just think. Just sometimes you just go and do it. That's it. Just don't. That's it. Because I can spend a lot of time thinking about ways of doing things, and almost to the point where I just get bogged down and almost afraid to sort of make that first mark. But you've really just got to leap in and do it. And that's the best thing. Just always just do it.
Damn Nike.
How many people are saying this?
I know.
Yeah.
At least when I'm writing something, it's very much that. I know that if I spend too much time in like the nitty gritty of it, or like thinking it and overthinking it, it won't be done and it won't come out. And it's better off, like I say, to like start something and finish it than to have started it and just leave it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're all, in a way, if you're a creative person, we're all coming from the same thing, where we're just kind of, especially in Australia, because, we all, there's always that point, if you're making comics now, there was always that point where you just kind of like, actually, I can do this, and this isn't just an American art form. It's not for American artists. It's something that I can do. And I think as a creator in Australia, on whatever level and whatever art form you're using, there is that point. We have I think culturally, we have a strange idea, a strange attitude towards art. It's very much, I think, at arm's length. It's for other people, and it's for, it's for galleries, and it's from overseas, and yet there are, these amazing art communities like there is at Indie Comic Con, there's an incredible amount of people there, and it's just, but it still feels like it's still gaining momentum and gaining sort of, gaining attention, really. I mean, in this past week there was an article in The Age about Australian superheroes, and yet its wording was really bizarre, because it's just sort of like, and superheroes are also drawn by Australians as well, and the way the article was worded was like quite speaking down, and just sort of like, hey, just kind of very simple. And so it still seemed like wider attitudes are, just very dismissive of local creativity.
I think that they don't understand the vastness of it. I don't think, and they can only find whatever they find on the internet, but they don't look nearly deep enough. They don't understand.
I think it's got to do with that age-old Australian cultural creed. It's part of our culture. It's like, we come from, the dominant culture is a bunch of people that found themselves here sort of against their will, basically, and so always looking to home, and then later immigrants again, coming to essentially an unwelcoming place, and so always, this was kind of where they were, but still the ties were back home, and it's different, and I think it's in that sort of way you look to America, which is different, and America seems to have always been attitude of, this is the new world, this is where we're going to make our art, this is where we're going to make our dreams come true, and Australia culture is still to sort of catch up to that.
It is. I've always perceived it as being, when you grow up in the United States of America, you're taught that you are the star of your own story.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in Australia, you are the fan of someone else's story that you keep it at arm's length and never tell them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You don't want to give them too much praise.
And I think that's been a thing that artists in all mediums have had to learn to adjust to and overcome, particularly with the increase in availability of the world via the internet, and the whole idea of social media as an outreach, the ability to connect with audiences from all over the world. I think it's required a learning process in the Australian creative industries for the artists themselves about what is okay to be proud of.
Absolutely. I think and well, just as a creative, one of the sort of hurdles, it's one thing to be okay to sit in your room and make art, but it's another thing to learn that skill of self-promotion and self-marketing, and not feel ashamed of being overly boastful. It is a kind of walking a tightrope, a cultural tightrope.
And I think that's something that, at least from what I've seen in Australia, is, I think that's what most creators struggle with most. It's not the creating the artwork or anything like that, because they've got that down pat. They're always learning, they're always creating, they've got that. But then as soon as it comes to selling themselves and selling their wares and products, if you walk around at a convention, and by no means is this a slight against them, you have to act almost like a used car salesman. You have to, and I was talking to someone out on the floor before, you have to engage the customer. They don't have to engage you. They're not going to, unless your work's known or like you've got an eager fan, they're not making a beeline to you. You've got to push yourself, but then also at the same time, that means that you've got to have that air of confidence. Real or fake, you can put it on, you can have that alter ego or anything like that that's needed. And that leads perfectly into the next question, which is, what do you find is critical to the work of an artist, like, and like crucial? Like what do you find is something that's like needed to be successful as an artist, or at least to yourself as an artist? Yeah.
Never give up. Never surrender.
John Cena.
Well, kind of, yeah, you know, because there are times when I'll be working on something and I'll be like, oh, this just isn't going the way I'm going, and you know, it can be really disheartening. And the thing is to just push through it, just to finish it, and also finish your projects. You know, I'm sure other people have said that. The most important thing is that no matter what happens, finish the project, because if I don't finish it, then it's just one of the things that kind of just, I don't know, it preys on your mind, you know, and it weighs you down. You just feel like you're surrounded by unfinished projects. So just keep chipping away at it. That's it, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I think that's something that resonates with at least a lot of creatives. So I'm hoping that it'll be helpful to aspiring creators or people starting out, is the fact that so many people have said that today, that you've pretty much got to start it.
Yeah.
And it's a bonus
to
finish it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I've got projects that I've started and not finished, and I'm sure nearly every creative would have.
Yeah.
I know Brenton would have songs that are half written or, you know,
Too
fully
much
written
curse.
but not recorded.
Yeah. Look, it
So-
happens, you know, and sometimes it's because the idea just isn't right. But you know, I mean, it's okay if some go through, but you know, on the whole, I think, you know, it's still, you really want something, you just got to do it, you know.
Completely, and like, do it when inspiration strikes.
Yeah.
Don't just expect that
don't
inspiration
wait.
is going to return.
Yeah, and sometimes it is a grind, you know, and then sometimes it is just, you just got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And that's okay too, because there are days when I'm not feeling like a heavy lifter, but I'm not feeling like I can be creative, but I can just do the grunt work, you know, whatever it is. And sometimes it's a balance of that, when to know when to be the heavy lifter and when to be just the creator as well.
I guess we'll wrap this up with this and get you to plug your stuff, what you're working on at the moment, if you're allowed to say it, and if you're at liberty to, and also where people can find you on social media, where they can purchase your work as well.
Yeah, cool. So I've probably got about 4 projects on the go at the moment at various stages of development. One's a history comic that's based on the life of a Melbourne detective who lived in the mid to latter 19th century. And that's me writing and drawing that. A lot of research has gone into compiling the story, and it's just working on the final artwork. There's another little 6-page story that's a collaboration with Scar Studios, so Steve Carter and Annette Ryder. And that was a story or a script they gave me a few years ago, and I said, yeah, I'll do this at 6 pages, and I just sort of put it on the back burner there, and just kind of went, you know what, I want a little 6 pages just to work on something different, and so that's coming along. It's almost finished. There's a couple of other sort of more secret-y projects that I will post on social media, little teasers for. One's one that's got a bit of monsters in it, and the other one's a little bit more sci-fi fantasy story, but I haven't posted anything about that yet.
Knowing your art, I think that you're made to do monsters. Like just the
Yeah.
the vibe that your art has. I think
Yeah, right, okay, yeah.
I think so. I think you can
Yeah.
do some very cool stuff with
It's
monsters.
been, yeah. I haven't drawn a lot of monsters, but yeah, it's been fun to sort of go all out. I still haven't got the level of. I would like to get a little bit more body horror in my monsters, which is something I think Steve Carter has he's mastered. I feel my monsters look a little bit cutesy by comparison. A little bit Pokemon, but
cute things can be scary.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, if they're too cute, you're like, oh my god. Take my eyes out. That's too cute.
And then they've got you where they want you, right? Perfect opportunity to pounce.
Yeah.
No one suspects the defenseless.
Yeah, that's so true. And I guess find me online, Facebook. Just search for my name. I come up. There's a group page, which and also a personal page. There's Instagram is probably my preference.
Seems to be everyone's these days.
Yeah, well, I like the, it's all just pictures, so it works.
And you've got like one of the best Instagram names as well.
Oh, woohoo Roux. So because I guess that woohoo part was when I decided that I was going to go crazy and stop working full time and go, I'm just going to find part-time work and pursue my art. And so woohoo. And Roux, spelled R-O-O. So it's all W-O-O, H-O-O, and then R-O-O. And it's on Instagram with a period in between. So woo.who.roux.
Brilliant.
You didn't even say that enthusiastically.
Oh, didn't I?
No, you should try again.
Woo.who.roux.
There you have
Brilliant.
it.
That's exactly the level of enthusiasm we expect on the Radults podcast. Before we let you go, though, we do have to play one little segment that we do with every guest, which is called a rad break. Yeah. In place of any advertising we may have, we have a little rad break, just like a game show where we ask you a question or two and ask you to respond to it in a certain way.
Right.
So your options in this instance are the choices of rad or fad.
Wow.
Okay?
Right.
And the question I'm going to ask you is streaming services purchasing nearly every comic property they possibly can and then converting it into long-form TV series either rad or fad?
I'm gonna go with fad on that one. I think it's fad. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it works great for the creators because we've all heard about the stories of how much money there is in comics.
Yes.
And so on that level,
Or lack of.
Yeah. So I think it's great for that. But who knows? I think so. Superheroes may move on, but then they'll go into. It's just stories. It's just another.
I think they've found that out. They're running out of superheroes that they know of.
Yeah.
So that's where you get like the stories. Like they're picking up all the Jeff Lemire stories at the moment to be made into movies.
Yeah. Miller World.
Yeah. So you're getting things that they go, oh shit, no more. Like superheroes are like, we can't name anymore. Let's go and move on to it. They picked up, I think, like half a dozen Greg Rucka, pieces for movies and. To be honest, we're probably not going to see half of them ever become anything.
It does remind me of when they signed every grunge band in the 90s, right?
Yeah,
and then they just gave them multi-million-dollar contracts and never released their records.
Yeah, wow, really? Jeez.
Yeah, so they went to Seattle, record execs would just turn up in Seattle, well after the boom had happened.
Yeah.
And would just hand out these massive 6-album deals to these bands that were never going to generate 6 albums worth of income. Probably the funniest one is Jawbreaker, this punk band from the US, which were never going to create a commercial hit record, right?
Yeah.
They got given millions of dollars to make this record that everyone ended up hating and got cut from their label. But guess what they don't lose when they get cut from their label?
The deal.
The advance. So they end up shooting themselves in the foot, and then they end up becoming a really decent punk rock band again after that. Yeah, right. And the album they made is actually good, right? But they'd moved on by the time that the execs carried on to it. So I think maybe there's a little bit of a possibility that some of these comic creators might end up being able to finance their own better adaptations.
Well, for me, it's there's the television adaptation or the movie adaptation or whatever, and then there's the actual comic work, and if I always prefer the comic work, that's what gets me, so I mentioned Mignola earlier, I think Hellboy's a great little thing, but great character. The new movie that's coming out, I'm just well, good on you, Mike. I'm glad you're getting, your millions of dollars there. You'll be able to retire happy, but, I just want you to draw another comic.
Well, that's awesome. And then on top of that, like that tagline for that movie is legendary AF.
Yeah.
Hellboy, for anyone that doesn't know, was born in World War II.
Yeah.
Well, he was
Yeah.
a teenager or whatever in World War II.
Yeah.
when
He came into
to
this
Earth.
world, as in World War II.
When and if anyone's ever read any Hellboy, he would never use the term AF ever. He would actually probably shoot you with his gun, like before ever saying that.
Yeah.
And to see that was on the official movie poster, I knew there and then, as much as David Harbour looked awesome as Hellboy, that they lost the plot and that there was something wrong with this movie.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess I'll probably see it.
So
Hey, I went and saw the Justice League movie knowing
So
what
did
was
I.
going to happen. Like, I knew that this was heartbreak.
But
going in.
there's always that little part that just wants, has to watch the car crash.
You don't. But I go to as many comic-related movies as possible, mostly to show support, to say like, hey, why can't this be happening? Like, hopefully, if more people see these movies, like they'll do more vast, diverse movies.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that Why the Last Man series. I'm holding on hope. But
I've still got to read that series. It's on my list.
that's my equal favourite with Invincible.
Yeah, right, okay. Wow,
Invincible
okay.
and Why the Last Man,
Yeah,
my
right.
favourite series of all time.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah, so I guess we'll wrap this up now, because I'm going to cry at the thought of another Hellboy movie, because it probably shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Definitely a certified Radult. And everyone should check out Cristian's work at woo.who.Roux. So that was my impersonation of you.
All right, okay.
No, pick up his work, and thanks for joining us.
No, thanks very much. Cheers.
Woohoo!
welcome back to Radults podcast here at Indie Comic Con.
That's so Australian of you.
Is Jennifer Reuter. Jennifer, welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, straight into it, hey?
Yeah.
We don't fuck around.
Well, I call myself a visual storyteller.
Awesome.
Do illustration, comic art, and animation. And that's the gist of it. I come from Germany, as the last name might suggest.
Yes.
But I've been living in Australia for, how many years is it now? 15. Yeah.
That's all. So we've had an American, we've had a Swedish
Person.
now German,
And a Crambonian.
and someone from Cranberry. That's probably the actual most exotic person we've ever had.
Cranberry.
Yeah.
A cranny rat.
Cranbernian. So moving on from that, because obviously we don't pull any punches, we don't muck around here.
Mm-hmm.
What are your influences when it comes to creating comics and art?
Well, I have a lot of influences, which makes it very hard to track down. It's one of those things where, I'll say, I do illustration, I do animation, but then, it's too many things at once. I think some obvious ones that come to mind are Ghibli, Studio Ghibli, they do all of those films. But for one of the comics that has inspired me for what I'm doing now is an anthology called Flight. They had a few volumes a few years back that really got me into comics to begin with. And I think those are the big ones. Maybe you've heard of Stand Still, Stay Silent?
Yeah.
Yeah, a webcomic. That one's a really important one for me. Yeah.
Cool. One thing that I'm always interested in when I'm talking to guests is knowing if they experience writer's block and whether or not they believe it exists and what their strategies are for getting around it.
Yeah.
So for you personally, is writer's block an issue?
I used to have a lot of writer's artist block.
Yeah.
Thankfully, over time, it's kind of reduced. It doesn't mean I don't get stuck. I definitely get stuck. But it's less of a, I can't do anything at all. It's more just, I have this problem that I have to deal with and I have to
get past it. Like a story, hook isn't interesting or something. Some tricks that I do is like, if I'm stuck with drawing, I will do studies. If I'm stuck with the story part, then I will sometimes do the opposite of something. So if it's like, this character is juggling balls, but it's not interesting enough, what if they drop them,
Or they're flaming balls.
Yeah. So, doing the opposite sometimes gets the ideas flowing.
Yeah, it's good to know. I guess going from that, and you're talking about like things that are exciting and all that sort of stuff. What was your favourite childhood book?
Oh, gee, I need to think on that one because that's been a while.
What? You still don't read it?
Well, because I grew up in Germany, and the books that I recall from that, I think actually one of the Australian books that comes to mind is, I forget the exact title, but I think it was something like The Invisible Possum or...
Magic Possum?
Magic Possum.
Yes.
That was such a good book.
Yeah, what a book.
Yeah,
No, Possum Magic.
Possum Magic.
Possum Magic,
It's
yes.
Mem Fox, right? Is it Mem Fox, the author?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Yeah.
Possum Magic, yeah.
That's a book that I sometimes think back to because it was so clever. How do you solve invisibility? Eat Australian food.
We now have an invisible German walking around. What did you eat? Nothing but 4 and 20 pies and drink BB.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that the Lamington may not be Australian, even though it's featured in that book.
I can't remember that.
It's Lamington and Pavlova.
Pavlova,
Both
yeah.
of those are like contested.
Yeah, they're contested. New Zealand really want them for some reason.
Look,
They don't want Russell Crowe, but they do want Lamingtons and Pavlovas.
I think we should make a deal with them and go, look, if you take Russell Crowe, you can have the Lamington and Pavlova.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going off from obviously like reading childhood books and influences and stuff like that, what are you currently reading that sort of resonates with what you're doing?
Well, I did mention Stand Still, Stay Silent.
Yes.
That's one of them. I'm really keen on that one. It's a Finnish artist called Minna Sundberg. And I just love the visuals of it. And it's like both quirky and spooky. That's kind of a mix that I really enjoy. What else am I reading at the moment? Yeah, that's the most pertinent one I can think of. Another comic that I enjoy is Sakana, another webcomic. It's set in a Japanese fish market, and it's just all the things that the characters run into, and it's like it's a romantic comedy, but they all these characters just stuff each other up. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful that people stuff
Stuff
each
each
other
other
up.
Stuff for each other, yeah.
Awesome. Alright, so these are sort of shorter form versions of the podcast, so we're going to have to move into the part now where we get you to plug your stuff.
Alright, sure.
So
Good stuff,
it is the good stuff. That's really what we're here to do, that's to push the voices and the art of creatives that we find inspiring and that we think other people should know more about.
Yeah.
And that definitely includes you. So perhaps you would like to tell the lovely listeners where they can find all of your work.
Right. My website is www.jarodragon.com. So just picture a dragon in a jar and you're pretty much there.
I love that so much.
And I'm the same on Twitter and on Instagram, jarodragon. And that's where you can find my work.
Yep, so I guess this brings us to a really good section which we call our rad break. So it's almost like a little bit of a game show sort of thing. We ask a question. This one that we have for you, it's rad or fad.
Okay.
So pretty much we give you a topic and you have to tell us if it's like radical and fun or if it's a fad and should go away.
Right. Okay.
So
no in between.
Yeah, no, there's no in between. There's no such thing. So I'm going to say two together. They're joined, which is Lamingtons and Pavlova. Are they rad or are they a fad?
I can't have both at the same time, Fad.
So you heard it first. We have to make a Lamington flavoured pavlova or a pavlova flavoured
Lamington. I'm going to make a Lamington and pavlova flavoured donut. That's also a beer.
That can be served with pizza.
Yes. And is kept in a jar of a dragon.
Yeah. So that leads us to the end of the episode with you. So thanks for joining us, Jennifer. Be sure for everyone to check her out, Jar of Dragon, and pick up her work. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Support the things you love, and we love your work, so everyone support it.
Yes. You're a certified Radult. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you. Who you are and what do you do?
Oh, geez, that's a good question.
A good question. Start off with a good question.
Not too sure what I do sometimes, but yeah, 35-year-old comic book artist in general, is kind of the way I look at it. And I've been doing illustration in comics. Well, been a fan pretty much my whole life, and then about 2009 got a bit of one of these kind of bolt from the blue sort of moments, I suppose, with a friend. And it was one of these times where I had that Maslowian hierarchy of needs. Like, I had that taken care of for the most part. I had the shelter, money. It wasn't like time was available and money was not that big of a constraint. And I was finding myself really fucking sorry.
No, you can swear.
Yeah, we like Preston.
It's Australia. You can swear.
Well, that way I found myself in this place where like I wasn't doing anything, and it was super depressing. But artwork and comics was something that I always wanted to do, and so I was now in this spot where it's like, well, you can now do this, and not doing it. And long story short, a friend of mine, he's a really good writer and creative, and it just sort of like, he wrote the story and it just started like clicking. And it really just got me pulled into taking it seriously. And so fast forward like almost 10 years now, and going through a lot of trial, error, a lot of kind of ups and downs, reinventing how I was going to approach doing this, but also keeping that, like, how are we going to keep doing this at the forefront of doing that in my mind has allowed me, fortunately, to keep going. So that's kind of who I am. I'm just another creative person out there in the world trying to entertain people with cool stuff. And sometimes it works, sometimes maybe not.
Tomato.
Potato.
Yeah, right. And I think it's keep going to it. It's the misses too. That's also it's a good lesson, because it's just like, all right, what is, not that you're trying to please everyone. I don't. Sometimes I take the misses as confirmation that you're actually doing something right.
Yes.
But sometimes when if it's, I don't know, I can also look at it too. It's like, oh yeah, maybe actually make this more cool, if that makes sense. That's a vague thing to say, but yeah, it's about that.
Most of us spend our lives trying to work out how to be more cool. It's fun.
I know. Yeah.
Speed stripes on everything.
Yeah.
Cool.
At the moment, apparently, it's a bomb bag or a fanny pack.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to live
Can we
to
get
see the
Radults
day.
bum bags?
No.
I tried.
We determined they were fat, if you don't remember.
Yeah.
Now, one question we like to ask all of the people who come on the podcast is about their influences and how they got into the medium they're currently working in. So for you, Daniel, what were your primary influences that led you to your artistic form?
Well, I think it's kind of funny you mention that too, because we were chatting a bit about some of the, like, as a kid, because there's a lot of kids running around today, and they're checking out comics, and there's a bit of concern that there's some of these comics, and rightfully so, there's definitely comics out there that kids should not be probably checking out. But it's like, nonetheless, I think there's this perspective on what a kid's comic should, like, artistically look like.
They should look like space cops.
Or it should look like SpongeBob, for,
Yeah.
you know, and SpongeBob, you know,
Rest in peace.
real
Hills
quick,
Day.
yeah, rest in peace, man. You know, awesome cartoon, but it's like there's this aesthetic. For me, it was like Todd McFarlane's like Spider-Man back in the '90s.
And
Because Spider-Man had this look, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, this
that
is
issue 1 cover.
wild.
Everyone
Yeah.
knows that issue 1
With the
cover.
spiderwebs and
Like,
this- yeah.
yeah.
And it was just like, this is a new thing. This is a new way art can look, and it drew me right in, and I loved it. And you know, then growing up, you know, getting exposed to the naughtier side of comics, also like Lady Death, was a huge fan of that for big reasons, and then yeah. And then, you know, then discovering like Frank Miller, and there was another sort of aha moment about like what an artist can do with the medium itself, and it's just really, you know, there's even now at 35, I still am discovering artists from like the 80s and 70s who were pretty grungy or pretty underground that have like just this wealth of talent. And it still kind of inspires me. And there's a lot of great artists and creators nowadays coming out too. So one need not look far to find a lot of really good, you know, examples of what can get you excited about comics, what get you excited about illustration or sequential art. Because I think almost every year someone is trying something new, and it's, you know, I'd say it's making comics really exciting.
Even if it came out today, I think it'd be like considered like pioneering, you know, like and innovative.
Definitely. And what gets me too is I work digitally now. I work in Photoshop.
Cool.
I got a Wacom tablet, and it's really allowed me to, I'd say, do more efficiently do what I do, but not just efficiently, but even do a more impressive style than I probably, I mean, realistically speaking, I wouldn't be able to achieve just doing pencil and paper and ink. And I look back at some of these artists at an era long before the computer could do this, and their artwork just almost brings me to tears because it's so good. And I just know there's no way I could ever do anything like this.
It's broken you.
Yeah, a little piece of me sort of just weeps inside, but it's also like, it's also incredibly inspiring too, because you're just like, this is the high mark of what this culture is being represented at in many ways. And it's good to, especially in this day and age too, when, you know, I think a lot of, like that simple fact, like art is being not only just done digitally nowadays, we're also at this cusp where it's gonna be done in a virtual reality medium, which kind of freaks me out a little bit, because I don't think I'm gonna be prepared to even dip a toe into any of that. But nonetheless, it's like, you know, you have a lot of artists being and creators coming out and doing new and fun and exciting stuff in digital art, but it's a lot of that, I think, is still very much rooted and steeped in, you know, like you talked about, like Will Eisner and Jack Kirby and these like original kind of pulp artists that were just getting stuff out really quick. And that style is still what makes doing this what it is. So that's what keeps me doing the artwork I do, and keeps me doing comic books, regardless of opportunities to probably make it, you know, a better living doing animation or, you know, graphic design or something. Yeah, because there's a lot of money in design, and I've tried my hand at that, and it's just like, I'm just not really that intrigued to do this. Like, comic book art, the medium of comic books is where my talents are, I guess.
Yeah, and I have the perfect question to lead on from everything that you've just spoken about there. What does, at least in the comic book medium, since you're focusing on that, what does like literary success look like to you?
Oh man.
Because you've just mentioned that it's not financial.
Yeah, it can't be. Look,
Well,
like,
that's great, because I'm actually doing a little workshop tomorrow about this whole thing about success, and I'm going to post a bigger, broader idea that's on my website too, at Invisible Ink Studio, because I think it's the written format of it. I think is probably better for people to follow along with. But yeah, like, what does success look like as an artist? Because it could look like money, it could look like Ferraris. That'd be awesome if I could afford a Ferrari.
Yeah. You're in the wrong industry.
I'm not gonna argue. I've actually stopped trying to sort of sell an idea that wealth isn't a part of success. I think wealth is very important to getting what you want to do done. You shouldn't when I hear
unless you're really good at bartering,
you get rid of all your stuff, and I was like, well, you should make more sense of your stuff, but you just shouldn't give up on others. But success for me is a lot more tailored towards knowing that I'm kicking ass at what I do. That's what I want success to look like. So when I do comics, if I'm going to write the story, I'm gonna tear it down until I know it kicks ass. If I'm gonna do an art piece, I'm gonna do it till it kicks ass. And I also open myself up for other people to tell me it's not kicking ass, because I really feel it's like, if you're not kicking ass at this, why did you start?
Then when they tell him that, he kicks their ass.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. And you also have to be. You got to know when someone's being stupid or whatever, and they're just being like, I don't like your artwork. Me. It's like, well, fine. But there's a few levels of that, and for me, like, when I do art, when I do a story or whenever I do anything, I try to live by 3 rules, and that's: 1, does it kick ass? 2, is this, for lack of a better word, is this insulting your viewer? But I think a better way of that is, are you kind of condescending in a sense? Are you actually being honest? So can it objectively kick ass?
Yes. Can
someone else look at it and be like, yes, I agree, you are doing a good job, or it's exciting for this reason. If other people don't see it that way, that's the 3rd rule. Stand by your artwork, stand by your work. And if you've put your heart and soul into it, and you've opened yourself up to criticism, to be sure that you're judging it with valid intention and merit, then you shouldn't have to do or say much about anything. What you do should defend itself. And at that point, that's what I think success is looking like, because hopefully you're going to be financially rewarded for that. But if you're not, that doesn't mean you didn't just kick the crap out of something and enjoy it, and it's making you look. That's where you're at. You know where you're at, pretty much, doing what you're doing at that point. And that's that.
That's an amazing answer.
I was watching Brenton's face there, and his jaw's just on the ground, listening. Going, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. It's full of very useful tips for people. We actually do this segment each time we do a full-length episode of this podcast, where we ask people for their tips for being a Radult.
And you pretty much
just did it off the cuff. So we've got your 3 tips for being a Radult.
Yeah.
And I like the way they have the words kick ass in them.
Yeah, that's it.
That's kind of how I think of it. It's not like, is it beautiful? Is it elegant? You can define it in many other ways, but to me, at its heart and soul, it's a little bit like, how rock and roll. Well, it either kicks ass or it can take on all different forms. But for me, like the Who, or the Rolling Stones, or Rage Against the Machine, or Pearl Jam, or whomever, Nirvana, it's like that feeling that transcends a description.
Yeah, it's the energy. It's the emotion in the vocalist.
That is like, this kicks ass. I can't explain it better.
It's perfect. So why are you at Indie Comic Con?
Well, let's see. I'm showcasing my title, which is Master and Apprentice, and it's a bit of a kind of a fun fantasy style of a story arc. And then another title I'm working on concurrently, both titles I'm actually working on concurrently, is Tin Suits, and it's a bit of a sci-fi superhero story. To describe it, it's like a superhero themed reality television battle royale set on Mars. It's sort of what's going on. That's the story. Yeah.
You had me at Mars.
Yeah, right.
That's the last word.
You had me at Battle Royale.
And it's a different writer. I'm intrigued to see where he goes with this, because I've read the script for the first one and I was like, it's pretty cool. We'll see where this goes. The second issue of Master and Apprentice will be coming out soon, hopefully like February. The second issue of Tin Suits will start in March 2019, and there will be actually a graphic novel called The Trial of Socrates that I've been working on for all of 2018 that should be coming out early 2019 also. So
Busy man.
Very busy, man.
Yeah.
And how do they find you on socials?
Just Invisible Ink Studio. Cool. You can find me at Facebook and Instagram. I don't tweet. Not much of a Twitter person.
That's okay. It's not really huge in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
So
just doesn't.
It's just me commenting on poor WWE creative decisions.
Yeah. Anyway, so we do a segment called a Rad Break. We put that in, so we have a little bit of fun. It's like a game show. Your one is Radults or Badult. We ask you a name of a person or something. You tell us if you think that they're a Radult or a Badult. So a Rad Adult or
a bad
horrible,
adult.
Yeah, I was going to say a horrible piece of shit.
In your instance, because you grew up in New Mexico, we figured it made complete sense to ask you if the fictional character, Walter White, is a Radult or a Badult.
Heisenberg.
Oh, Rattled. He's a straight up gangster, man. He's
He is.
a Rattled.
From that first scene in
Cold-blooded.
his underwear? Yeah.
Cold-blooded, but he kept his shit together, for 5 awful seasons. But man, he did it, and he's a Radult in my book. Yeah. Not a nice guy. I mean, he looked like he was a nice guy, but he
wasn't to really anyone, really.
No.
Like, he actually did a lot of harm to nearly everyone he knew.
his whole family, everything. He lost
He tried
it all.
to kidnap his daughter, tried to kidnap his son at one point, threatened to kill his wife if she let it out. His brother-in-law died because of his direct result. His sister-in-law or whatever, I didn't like her anyway, I wish she would have died.
Yeah.
And just everyone else that he ended up, and Jesse Pinkman I was going to say a bad word there, but got fucked over by him.
Yeah, but yes, a bad man. But he tried to make it all work because he initially cared for all these people, and he took an extraordinarily dangerous gamble to care for these people, and we were just chatting about healthcare system. I saw this great comic online about Season 1, Episode 1, Breaking Bad, so-and-so's got cancer, and he's got, universal health care, so guess what? Breaking Bad never happened.
That comic is bad.
And it's why would we send you into debt for medical stuff? That's how he only ever made drugs because he couldn't afford health care. It's so obvious. So it should be a lessons learned kind of situation.
Brilliant.
Give healthcare so that people don't have to resort to drugs.
High-powered drugs.
Imagine what they could have done is had a twist on that, and that he accidentally made the meth that cured cancer.
Oh, no, that would have been
All right, you can illustrate. I'll write it. We got this stuff. It's called Breaking Rad.
Yeah.
Breaking Rad.
All right. Well, on
thanks,
that note,
thanks for being on the podcast, Daniel.
Thank you guys so much. This has been rad.
It's been rad.